Okay. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining this meeting tonight. This is pretty informal. Um, so before we get started, uh, sometimes I forget to ask this. So I recognize, I think most of the names that I see here as people who have been atlasing, but sometimes someone joins who's brand new. And they kind of get lost as I just sort of jump in and start talking about things that I feel like everyone kind of knows about. So, like, is anyone here brand new to the Pennsylvania Atlas who would maybe need like a little more backstory on some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight? Maybe everyone's been atlasing. Okay. Good. So we can kind of jump in with things. So, just to start off, I just wanted to say that we've had a great summer with our second season of the Atlas. Everyone always asks how it's going. I think it's going great. Like we've had maybe a little tougher summer weather-wise this year, at least in some parts of the state. Lots of rain in June for me at least. I know it sounds like some areas are still having lots of rain. And I know um, around like Center County and Clearfield County, where I've been working, we've experienced in Huntingdon County, the periodical cicadas, which have been interesting when you're trying to do point counts. Wouldn't be birding without some input from Mother Nature, I think, but we kind of roll with it. But overall, things have been going great. We are at more confirmations currently than we had at the end of the second season of the last Atlas. So we're doing great. We're on schedule to like complete another highly successful Atlas. So I'm very pleased with that. We still like have slowly um like slowly are accumulating more and more atlasers contributing data. So we're up to around over 2,700 people now. I haven't looked at exactly how many of those people are actually using breeding codes. So I do, I see checklists sometimes where people have clearly heard about the Atlas but haven't like figured out the details yet and haven't learned how to use the breeding codes. So there are certainly some people in there who aren't using codes. But I think the vast majority of those people are. So it's pretty astounding to me that we have that many people wanting to contribute to this project and who care about birds and bird conservation in Pennsylvania. We've currently confirmed around 180-ish, maybe like 178 to 180-ish species in the state. I don't know the exact number because we haven't done like a full data review, like assessing every species to determine like if it should stay or if it's like legit. Um, so around that, we certainly have some priority species that we haven't been able to confirm yet. Remains to be seen if they will be confirmed breeding in the state or not. And we have our newest breeding species documented in the state as of a few weeks ago. The Wilson's phalarope documented breeding in Erie. So that's very exciting for the Atlas. I don't think that was like on anyone's radar as the next species that would be documented breeding. So that's very cool. So I'm going to kind of kick off our discussion tonight with a really short slideshow. I've got like 8 or 9 slides. Um, I'm going to do a really quick summary of the volunteer point counts and then talk about the topic for the evening, late season atlasing, and then we'll open things up for any questions or discussion or comments. Very informal, so please jump in with questions or anything uh, as we're going along. Let's see if I can share this now. All right. In all the pictures that I'm showing here, with I think the exception of maybe the point count slide, are photos of birds in July and August in Pennsylvania. I just wanted to showcase, lots of the cool things that we can still see in the coming weeks and months. All right, so just taking a step back from the topic of general atlasing, we just wrapped up our second volunteer point count season. Um, so just to explain this a little bit more, because I have gotten some questions about this lately. So point counts are a standardized survey. This is really important because our general atlasing is important for documenting breeding evidence, but it's generally not very standardized. So sometimes someone is birding for 10 minutes on a stationary checklist. Sometimes someone's walking around for an hour and maybe they cover uh, a tenth of a mile. Sometimes someone's walking around for 2 hours and they cover 3 miles. It's highly variable. So these point counts are a much more standardized way of collecting data that help us be able to analyze this specific data in a way to be able to estimate relative abundance of birds. So not just create maps of where species are breeding in the state, but show these maps that show, like, for example, scarlet tanager. Where is scarlet tanager more common in the state? Where are they less common in the state? Um, and we do have these two different point count protocols that we are uh, trying out this atlas. So we have our paid point count crew that is replicating point counts that were done in the last atlas. Those point counts have they have some more steps to the data collection, and we use a different app for those because we can't do everything as easily in eBird, and then the data get kind of collapsed down and like automatically uploaded into eBird, so you don't see everything that we collect in there, but we have all that stored in a separate database. Um, and I feel like there was something else I was going to say about that. Well, if you want me to talk more about what data we collect or how we do that, I'm happy to do that as well. But that's less important. And then this atlas, we are testing out these volunteer point counts that many of you are contributing to. So there are a few different reasons for this. And really, I guess probably the biggest reason is because those paid point counts are incredibly expensive. It's one of the biggest expenses of the atlas. And, really, like, that funding is not guaranteed. So in the fourth atlas in 20 years, fingers crossed, um, we may not have the funding for to hire a crew to do these surveys. So we're kind of testing out if we can rely on volunteers to collect data that will be, like, able to be analyzed in the same way, to come up with the same kind of maps that we want. Showing that relative abundance of species. Additionally, these volunteer point counts are done a little bit differently. So some of them are off-road, as many of you know. So our paid point counts are entirely road-based, and there can be some biases in that, probably detecting some species much less frequently, or potentially. Um, so with some of the volunteer point counts being farther away from roads, along trails or out in fields, we're hopefully going to be able to do some spatial analyses to test, like, if that affects, what species we're detecting on those point counts. And we're also just, like, really boosting the amount of data of the standardized data that we're collecting. So it's really cool, really valuable data. Um, I'm really, really appreciative of everyone who's doing this. These are not mandatory, and no one should feel obligated to do them, but I'm really thankful to the people who are. And I know they can be a lot of fun. Like, they can be kind of boring sometimes, but I think that most people who have done them have found them, like, like, some points are fine, but then occasionally get to a point and it surprises you because you find this like cool little habitat patch that you didn't know about, or you see something cool that you were totally not expecting to see and you wouldn't have seen if you didn't go, get forced to go to that spot for a point count. So they can be really rewarding as well. So when we started this project last year, I think there were like a really big learning curve, and started out a little shaky with some confusion. But like over the season, like people really figured it out, and then ahead of this season, we managed to put out a little YouTube video that helped explain things, and like a lot of you all helped explain it to other people. That was incredibly helpful. So this season went so much more smoothly. So we were able to get a lot more surveys done this year. I'm really, really pleased with how it went. Uh, we found about the same number of species this season. And this is, I should say, like, this is pretty much unreviewed data other than like the regular eBird review. So I haven't really touched this data at all. I probably won't until the end. Um, and you can see that you all reported over 42,000 birds last season on point counts and over 60,000 birds this season on point counts. It's a lot of birds. It's a lot of data to 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 use. It's really cool. And this will probably come as a surprise to exactly no one, but the two species reported the most frequently on these surveys were our favorite yard thrush. American robins were reported on 67% of point counts, and red-eyed vireos were reported on 49% of point counts. All right, so wrapping that up, we'll move into just talking about general atlasing this time of year. So as I'm sure you all have been experiencing in the last week or two or three, maybe depending on where you are in the state, singing rates are starting to go way down. Um, and sometimes that can feel kind of like it can be kind of a bummer. But if you listen carefully and you look carefully, there's still a ton of activity going on. It just looks and sounds a little different. So there are tons of birds out there. But often instead of perching out on branches and singing and being flashy, it's young birds that are hiding tucked in shrubs and parents that are sneaking in to feed them. Um, or like, you hear these little chirpy, chittery sounds that are nestlings and fledglings begging for food, or lots of call notes because there are pairs communicating as they are taking care of their young, or these family groups communicating. So like I have to remind myself now to kind of ignore the singing and be listening for those other sounds, those quiet sounds instead. So kind of assuming that you're working in blocks that you've already atlased in a little bit, and you already have sort of a list of species that you've documented in the block. In July and August, it's a really good time just to work on upgrading those species. So trying to get those remaining possible codes upgraded to probable and confirmed codes when possible. So these are like pretty basic tips that I'm sure people know. Birders know these things, but I think that it's still good just to remind yourselves of these, just like the day before you're planning your birding outing, to make sure you're prepared and ready to go. Pack the night before so that you can get an early start and get going before it gets too hot. When you get out there, start in open areas and on edges, and move into like the forest or the shady areas as it begins to warm up, where birds may still be a little more active. And cloudy and a little bit rainy days, or just after a little rain shower, can be good. Like there can be an uptick in activity. It's been pretty like warm and sunny around me lately, but yesterday was a cloudy day, and it was like a cool, slightly lower humidity morning, and it was just like a lot more active, and the birds were singing a lot more than they had been for a week or two, it felt like. It was really nice. Like, it was a good birding morning, so I was really glad that I made it out yesterday morning based on the weather forecast. So right now, I'd say, like the majority of species are still breeding, um, at least of passerines. Um, but as we progress, through July, like those those numbers of species will sort of tick down and down. Um, so as we continue on, it'll be a good time to focus more and more on some of these species that are later breeding species or multi-brooded species, so we can talk a little bit about those. Of course, lots of species will re-nest. So if they have a nest that fails because of depredation or a weather event or something like that, they will attempt to nest again. But then a bunch of species will also, even if they have a successful nest, they will have another nest or even two more nests. So we'll talk about those in a minute, but here are just a few species that tend or potentially can have nests a little bit later in the summer. So goldfinch and waxwing on average begin nesting a little bit later because their major food sources kind of come into season a little later. Cardinal and Carolina wren, they just sort of have a wider nesting season, so they start earlier, but they also extend a little longer than a bunch of species. Rock pigeon and house sparrows kind of nest whenever they want. So, this could still be a good time, like if you're having a slow day and aren't finding anything, but there's an overpass or bridge or whatever. Uh, or silo or whatever, it might be a good time to poke around and see if you can see any rock pigeon activity. And then the cuckoos are interesting, of course. They move around and breed in different locations in response to insect outbreaks, spongy moth caterpillars and tent caterpillars, and cicadas. So I've heard them much more in my area lately, following the periodical cicadas here. So they can, I think it depends on like whatever they're feeding on in that area, but they can potentially be a little later. Yep, there we go. All right, and then here are some of those multi-brooded species I mentioned. And a bunch of these are like really common species that are pretty easy to confirm. So if it's a block you've been working in for a while, you probably have already confirmed a number of these, but you can kind of look at these species and see what you haven't confirmed and maybe, what you might be able to look for later on or what you might have habitat for. Um, and just again, might be things that are good to look for later on if you have a slow, quiet day when you're not having lots of other things, because you have a good sense that they could still be breeding. All right. And the matter of coding juveniles. So, this time of year we start getting lots of questions about like, is this bird still young enough to code as a recently fledged bird, or is it too old? And sometimes it's really like with this wood thrush, it's obvious. This bird has that really fleshy yellow gape that's indicative of a really young bird. You can see a little bit of down sticking out on its head and a little bit on its back. You can see that like the wing feathers haven't fully emerged from the pins. The tail is super, super short. So this bird clearly is not a well-flighted bird. If you could watch this bird moving around, I'm sure it's like mostly hopping and maybe doing some really short, awkward flights. And then if you watched for a while longer, you would most likely see parents feeding it. It's clearly a bird that's dependent on parents still, and it has not moved far from the nest. But in like another week or so, a week or two, it would be getting a little more questionable, probably. Uh, and so like most birds within 2 to 3 weeks are probably getting like able to fly well enough that they could be moving considerable distances from their nest, and it becomes trickier then to decide if you should code them as a recently fledged bird or not. Um, and I think the really like so my advice here is like, well, one, try to watch for a while and see if you can see parents feeding, because that will help you decide with most species. Um, Not terns, because terns feed for a long time after they have moved far from the nest. But with most species, that's helpful. Um, and if you're able to take a picture or take some good notes about what the bird looks like and the behavior or the movements that you've seen, you can ask on Facebook and Discord, of course. And like people are really good about weighing in on that and helping most of the time come to a consensus. But then the other thing is like really when we need to think carefully about it is if it's like a priority or uncommon species, and especially like think about the habitat that you see this bird in. Is this the habitat that you know that this species breeds in, or like does it possibly breed in a slightly different habitat that might be a little bit, in a different area? That's when we need to think more carefully about this, because we really want to avoid coding this species for this block if we think there's a possibility that it didn't originate in that block. And then also just keep in mind that if it is an older juvenile, or if it's an immature bird, so it has immature plumage, like a raptor that is not in adult plumage, it does not get a code then. So it does not get the H code. H code is only for adult birds. Um, and then the last thing I wanted to say on this, I don't think this is a huge problem, but I did see this happening a little bit last year, later on in the summer and into the fall, when particularly with warblers, like starting in August, warblers just in general start getting confusing. But in particular, juvenile males and females, in their basic, or what we think of as like their non-breeding plumage, can look quite similar or virtually indistinguishable sometimes, in some species. And um, I was seeing photos of these birds being coded as fledglings. So like two issues, like I don't think that the people reporting this were able to determine that they were indeed um juvenile birds versus females. And also it was too late in the season to be coding them with that anyway. Like these birds, I think, were on the move already. So just something to keep in mind, as we progress later and later into the season. All right, and then I think this is the last slide. The
You got
final
it back?
the final things I wanted to
Oh,
say
wow.
are just to so unfortunately we're getting into the time where we have to start thinking about dates again. So June is like our golden month where you can kind of ignore dates and don't have to think about the breeding chart, and it's wonderful. Um, like for, I don't know, 99% of the birds you see, you can assume that they're a breeding bird if they're an adult bird, right? But
Sorry.
I changed the
despite,
screen size and it's
Oh, it
froze.
slowed it down.
let's, can you mute yourselves if you're
Okay.
talking, please? Um, so, so despite the heat, despite the fact that it's still early to mid-July, fall migration is beginning. So here in the next few weeks, we will increasingly begin to see birds moving around more and more. And these can both be birds that were breeding in Pennsylvania, moving around the state, and birds that were breeding elsewhere, moving through Pennsylvania. So we will begin to see
credit card wants to
species that are not Pennsylvania breeding species. I
$900.
saw this a lot
Saw that.
last year, starting in
But
August,
you
really.
gotta have like direct deposit or something tied to it.
Right.
saw this with shorebirds being coded a lot in August that are not Pennsylvania breeding species, as well as waterfowl later on. So, you know, like of course those codes will get cleaned up, but keep that in mind, you know, like this is an opportunity for us all to learn more about the species breeding in Pennsylvania and where they're breeding in Pennsylvania. So and also like this time of year, like I just said, you should be looking at the breeding guidelines chart or looking at those dates on the tools that we have on the website. So if a species is not on that chart, you shouldn't be coding it. And and for those species that do breed in Pennsylvania, so some of those early migrating species are beginning to leave safe dates. We have the first couple handfuls of species that have left their B weeks now. So they're in the E weeks, which means that they can be breeding still. Many of them are still breeding, but if you just see a bird sitting there or flying, you can't determine based on that it's a breeding bird. So you can't code it with H or S. I guess these are mostly like H birds at this point. This is primarily right now shorebirds, wading birds, swallows, also like common grackles, bobolinks, maybe a couple others. And like I said, like some of these are definitely still breeding. We still have plenty of breeding swallows, but you have to see actual breeding evidence, a probable or possible code at this point to code them. So just keep in mind right now, like there's a few more layers of what you like your thought process when thinking about coding a species at this point. You know, like what is the species? Is this an adult bird? Is it a species that breeds in the state? Does it breed in this region of Pennsylvania? Is it the right time of the year still for me to be coding it? All right, and that wraps that up. So yeah, like I said, it can get like a little disheartening with the heat and less bird song, but there's still so much atlasing to be done, and there's just so many birds out there right now. I know I'm just still learning every day that I get to go out birding. I'm seeing something new and learning something new, and it's really fun. And I hope that you all are experiencing the same and enjoying yourselves. Um, So I'll stop sharing that, and I'm going to open things up to you all now. Um, Looks like maybe we have some things in the chat here. Um, but you can ask questions, comments. If anyone wants to share a cool story or observation.
Hi, Amber. This is Barry Blust here.
Gary.
Uh, Addressing your comments about uh, coding things in the right block. I've run into a situation or two, for instance, where there's a stand of evergreens that straddles the boundary between two blocks. And I know for a fact that Cooper's hawks nested somewhere in that stand. Which block do I report those in? I'd hate to not report them at all. So do I just pick a block or?
I would just pick a block, pick one of the blocks, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Oh yeah, Melinda said she found a sapsucker nest doing point counts. Yeah, I've heard a number of people say that they found nests while doing point counts, and I've had the same experience. And that's really rewarding because I think the majority of birds that you're detecting on point counts, you don't really get to code more than like H or S. So when you do get to do a higher code, that's always really fun. Court found a rattlesnake gestation site and rattlesnake den on point counts, which is very thrilling. Allie wants a time turner like in Harry Potter for and I agree because um there's this thing that gets in the way of atlasing called work. So I need 8 hours for my work day and then like 4 more hours to Atlas in cool weather and time for my kids and all the other things. All right. Dave's question about, is there a way for county coordinators to see when a new species has been confirmed? I don't. No, not that I know of. I'm not aware of anyway. Yeah, so if young birds are still with parents, like generally it's safe to call them fledglings. I think that's a pretty good tip. Yeah, like um yeah, again, an exception is terns, which like is not obviously not breeding in most of Pennsylvania, but there were a number of terns coded in a number of places in Pennsylvania last year. I'm trying to think if there would be any other obvious exceptions to that one. If anyone thinks of any, chime in. Okay, Tom asked, so since H for habitat is for adults only, what code can you use for juveniles or young and appropriate habitat? If the bird is too old to code like FL or recently fledged, um, uh, but it's not an adult, it just doesn't get a code, which I think is like upsets some people because they really want to code it, but it's not you it's not a breeding bird, right? And you don't know if it came from that block, so it just doesn't get a code. You might, keep an eye on that area for the next season or whatever, but yeah, birds are moving. Okay, question about great blue herons being coded in Somerset or Fayette County. Are they likely to breed here? So should they be coded possible or probable? Where's Tom? Does Tom want to chime in on this? Do you know of breeding sites in those counties? Or anyone else that is more familiar with those areas?
If Tom was Tom Kuhl, I'm not sure
Yes.
of sites there. I know Westmoreland sites, but not Somerset or Fayette.
Yeah, this is Mike Falkovich. I'm the county compiler for Fayette for PA Birds, the journal. I don't know offhand of any great blue heron rookeries in Fayette, but I'm not all over the county either. So if I see them, I guess I put them as habitat.
Yeah, I guess like I'm wondering what probable code you might have observed for great blue heron, or it might just be like a general question and maybe there wasn't a specific probable behavior observed, but I don't know. I think I don't know. Like if you're repeatedly seeing herons in an area, I think it's certainly, worth coding something. But maybe we can look at the maps again too.
One of the
This is-
problems with great blue herons is they can fly 35 miles to a feeding site. And so it's a question of which block they might be breeding in.
Yeah. Yeah, like I guess like so if you're repeatedly seeing them in an area trying to figure out if they're getting food there or something else is going on there.
This is Tom Kuhl. Today I saw a bird in a snag and thought I was going to get the first harpy eagle in Pennsylvania. So I only had my phone with me. I turned around and suddenly it turned into a great blue heron. But I was hopeful.
Did it have feathers up?
It must have been tucked down when I first drove by, but I had great hopes. Mike
Um,
Fialkovich, the reviewer, would have refused it, but that's okay.
Carol said she almost stepped on an ovenbird nest doing a point count. That's very exciting. Allie almost stepped on a common yellowthroat nest. Oh yeah, so a question about or I guess comment and question about uh like when a block has someone who's birding in it a lot and submitting atlas checklists that don't have any breeding codes. So it's accumulating effort. So it looks like it has a lot of effort hours, but not really many or any coded birds. So how can we encourage people to code birds? That's a great question and one we've talked about a lot. I don't know, like if you know them, and can like I guess it just depends. Like if you know them, maybe you can ask them if they want to go out atlasing with you. Because I found that so many people just want, they don't want to read it on the website or in the manual or whatever. They just want someone to like show them on their phone how they do it. Or if you can tell them about a bird walk that's happening where they could see someone do it. Some people just don't want to do it. So I don't know. Maybe other people have better suggestions. I think like a few people lately have had some luck with like with some bird walks that are atlas focused. You know, if anyone wants to do those in their county, that might be helpful, but obviously the person has to want to do it too. They have to have an interest in it. A question about bobwhites that are that are farmed and released bobwhites and then nest successfully. I don't know of any bobwhites nesting successfully other than the ones released at Fort I think it's Fort Letterkenny. But I think that I don't know. There's been discussion like that record is in the atlas right now. I don't know if it will stay in or not. Like there'll have to be more discussion about it, and I think it might depend on what happens in the subsequent seasons. Um, Although like if it's that first generation, that those released birds that are nesting, I don't know if those will count or not. But so far I don't know of any just like farm like out on farms or like
Amber,
yeah.
that question came from Mifflin County, where some of the Amish do exactly that. And I think
Did they have nesting?
I have to ask John Kaufman about it, but he asked me about it, and I suspect it could happen occasionally. I would tend to say it probably should not be coded, but
I don't think it will stay in the atlas for analyses, so it's probably not worth like trying to get the information. I don't know about pheasants either. That's the next question down.
Yeah, I just
don't
saw
know.
my family today, actually. I was just driving down. My husband said he had seen a male ring-necked pheasant in this spot, and I drove by there and I saw a male, and then I saw the female, and then I saw rustling in the grass, and I'm like, oh boy, and then I got out, and then they flew off, and two young chicks flew off with them. Pretty small. I mean, I got video of the chicks. I know they released the pheasants in the game lands right there in the fall for hunters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess they some of them that they released nested, and I've long suspected that they do that in this area because I would find the males displaying even into the spring, but this is the first time I actually found the family with chicks.
Yeah, Andy Wilson saw pheasant
I saw that.
babies last year, and he did code it. So
Yeah, so that's what makes me think I should.
yeah,
I found
because
another species, 96.
yeah.
So, but
Yeah, I mean, so I again, that's one I don't know if that will stay in or not. There'll have to be some discussions around that. So, but
I feel like I don't want to like lose a species. Thanks.
is there a way to track the number of completed and missing volunteer point counts by county before the end of the Atlas year? So probably within the next few months, we'll get we'll get those hero maps updated. I don't know exactly when that will happen because that Andy Wilson runs the hero page, which I'm very thankful for. He does that for us. So I still have like a little bit of point count checklists that are trickling in, so I'm gonna wait a little bit longer to make sure people get those in. But then I'll get that all cleaned up, and then I'll get that to Andy, and then at some point when he has time, he will get those hero maps updated. So I think that's what you're asking, Carolyn. So you'll be able to see that like before next season. Like we'll try to get that well before next point count season for everyone to see. Okay. There's so yeah, Melinda's comment about like some library presentations. So anyone who wants to do an Atlas presentation, I share all of my presentations. Like I'm happy to share any presentation, like the slides that I've done, if anyone wants to use those to do a little presentation. So just let me know if you ever want to have access to those, and if anyone wants to do an Atlas talk or presentation, you don't need my permission to do that. I'm happy to have as many people doing that across the state. Even if you just connect with like a few people, if you get like 1 or 2 people interested in it and like participating, I think that's a win. So yeah.
I have something to answer for Dave on seeing the warblers that are
Up high.
way up high. I have the same problem because I can hear so many of them and I'm just staring up into these hemlocks and can barely catch a glimpse. A lot of times they sound a lot closer than they actually are. It sounds like they're right over my head, but sometimes they're like a few trees the other way or something. And I mean the Blackburnians, they have that like 2 to 3 part begging call. I guess you get used to hearing it. Black-throated green's trickier because the adults will make this constant just like chip 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 chip, and in between singing, even like constantly. So, but if I've noticed that the babies, they have more, the chip chip gets like it gets very like fast and close together when they're being fed. And but it can be hard to see for sure, especially if you can't actually see them, and especially if there's multiple warbler species in the same tree and you don't know necessarily which ones are begging and being fed because you can't see them. It's very tough. But I guess the begging calls, at least the Blackburnians, is pretty distinctive. I can't speak to the Parullas or Parullas because I haven't confirmed those yet. So that's all.
Yeah, those species are hard. My my only confirmations of those species has been by chance and not because I was targeting them. So I don't think I have any good tips, but I just happen to see feeding. Okay. And a question about if I hear birds sing where it was coded S during a point count a week or more previously, can I code it S7? I think that the Atlas like planning team determined that S and S7 is ideally used by the same person. Like you are S7ing S7ing your own S's, right? Does that make sense? And the reason behind that is that like you want to make sure that you want to be as sure as you can that it's the same bird, like the same territory. Um, I do think like when it is a point count and you're going to the exact same spot, like maybe there's more opportunity for a different person to S7 it. So maybe we can be a little more lenient with that. Because I think like another person coming could be just as uh confident that it's the same bird singing as if like the original point counter returned. Like, um, so I uh I think is Dan Browning on here? I don't know if Dan is here. I saw a Dan, but I don't know if Dan wants to chime in, if that is him. But so I think there's possibility of that for point counts specifically. I think if it's a uh regular birding checklist where someone is moving and you don't know exactly where they were when they heard such and such species, then it should really be the same person who's S7ing that bird that they S'd. Does that make sense? I'm trying carefully here to like share my opinions and not go against the kind of general opinions of like the greater Atlas team also. So I have to be careful. I think I caught most of the questions in the chat, but if I missed something, please chime in. If anyone, maybe there were more like responses to things that I missed. It's hard to talk and like read these at the same time. But if anyone wants to jump in with any other questions right now or like stories or anything, please do. Or maybe just everyone wants to be quiet and not turn their screen on.
Amber, what's the best way to contact you? Because I would be pretty interested in the slides to do a presentation.
Yeah, I am, you can get a hold of me at pabirdatlas@hawkmountain.org.
Let me write that down.
I can put that in the chat.
Thank you. I'm planning a bird walk for the Master Watershed Steward program also, but I'm not really supposed to overlap those two things a whole lot.
Okay, question about coding pair for turkeys. I think probably I'm probably not like the best expert on turkeys, but I think like mostly when you see like like males and females together, you would be able to code like they would be, you know, displaying. So you could code probably like courtship or what do other people say here?
I would code courtship. Because like you said, if they're together, they're typically displaying.
Yeah. Like I don't think you really like during that season really see them together otherwise.
Correct.
Yeah, Atlas t-shirts and things are available on the website. I'm trying to remember what like tab it's under. I think it's, what is it? Just like shop? Donate and shop. So you just go to the website, there's donate and shop tab. It's all under there. There's like the bonfire page, and then some stuff is just available in the Hawk Mountain store as well. So they have like some cool magnets and things. And I will be at the PSO festival I won't be there on Friday. I'll be there on Saturday, and we'll have a booth, and we'll have a little bit of merchandise available then for sale. If anyone would like to volunteer to sit at the booth and sell things on that Friday evening for me, then things could be available for sale that night as well. I have another like Atlas related event I have to go to that Friday night, so I won't be able to be there that night.
Amber, can you let me know when you find out about the pheasants so I'll submit them if it's gonna be included. I just don't want to like see my confirmed species number go down.
So you would rather not submit it?
Well, when you let me know, I mean, I have a video on my phone of the baby so popping out of the grass, so I know the date and I know exactly where it was, and it was an incidental anyway because I was driving.
I think if Andy Wilson submitted it, you should submit it.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know.
I'll just like because those birds they get released, but they did then go on to nest, and it's like, how many generations would they have to nest to be considered nesting here?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like probably it would have to be like birds that survived over the winter and then
Oh, they
nested.
did.
But we also don't
They're
know.
released in the fall for hunting.
They're released in the fall.
So they survived the
So
winter, and they found each other, mated, and had chicks.
okay. Wait, are the bobwhite released in the spring?
Oh, I have no idea about bobwhite. I'm talking about pheasants.
When are the bobwhite released?
I have no idea. There's not bobwhites here. So.
Maybe I have to figure this out. Maybe this is a distinction. I should know this, guys. I'll share a cool story real quick. I was atlasing in McKean County I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago with Joe Geikus, and we were hearing sapsuckers, and we kind of walked into the woods a little bit, and we saw this female carry food, and like we saw her go to a tree. So we thought she was going to the cavity, to the nest cavity, but then we saw her like fly off with the food too, and we were kind of confused. And we watched for a little bit, and we saw her like do it again, and then we like backed away and like got around to the other side of the tree, and then we like hid and watched for a while, and then we saw that she was coming to the tree with her insects and dipping them in sap wells, and then carrying them off to the cavity and then feeding them. So we eventually did find the cavity and saw the parents feeding. And and we were like, is she really doing this? Is she really dipping them in sap? And I looked up on Birds of the World and they do this. So I think it's just
That's
like getting
wild.
a little bit of extra calories on them, I guess. But it was interesting because the female was dipping all the insects that she brought and the male was not. So like the female was really going the extra mile for her babies. But anyway, it was just such a cool behavior. And this is, that like this is the kind of stuff that we learn through atlasing. Like I would not have known that otherwise. I wouldn't have encountered that information. So it was really, really cool. All right. So Julia says that pheasants are accountable species as there's evidence of some small self-sustaining population. And yeah, and bobwhites are still considered extirpated. Um, so yeah, Allie, you should, yeah.
Okay, the only other issue I have is that I saw them along the road that is basically a block boundary, or actually it's slightly into the other block, but I'm sure that they nested in the swamp, which is where they get released, and were just out wandering by the road, especially because when I got out and flushed them, they flew back towards the swamp. Even though that wasn't the block I was physically in when I saw them, but it was like maybe a few feet into that block.
Yeah, I guess put them in the one you think they came from.
The swamp. That's where they. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Julia.
Yeah, thank you so much. Julie.
Actually,
that helps me so much.
I do remember being part of this discussion now a little bit last summer when there was discussion of like if the bobwhite breeding confirmation from Fort Letterkenny should go into the atlas or not. So I couldn't remember the details. Okay. We're coming up on an hour now. So any lingering questions? All right, we'll wrap things up. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, continue having fun atlasing. And yeah, keep up all your hard work. Really appreciate it. Have fun.
Thank you, Amber.
Thanks,
You know, I
Sam.
could tell a zillion stories about cool birds I've found recently. Yesterday, a barred owl, a baby, flew right over my head and perched and went, ee! And then just flew away. It happened so fast. But it was so cute. And I found baby Canada warblers yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And baby pine warblers, which I wasn't even expecting. And I was like,
yeah, I saw pine warblers a few days ago too, and that was really exciting. Another really exciting recent one was like great horned owls moved into my neighborhood over the winter, a pair, really close to my house. And but they like I pinpointed where I was pretty sure the nest was, but it was like where a bunch of yards met up. So I couldn't really get right to that spot. And then just like I don't know, a few weeks ago, we heard the fledglings, and then I went out and I just wanted to get a little closer to listen to them, but I happened to see them. Two of them were in this pine tree, and it was like sticking up higher than the other vegetation, so I could see their silhouettes in the pine tree. It was very, very cool. It was fun.
That's wonderful. That's one I have not found in the county yet. I found them in another county. That's so
3 more years.
So sorry?
3 more years.
Oh, yeah.
No pressure.
It's crazy because sometimes if I'm like birding in a public place and people get talking, they'll tell me like, "Oh, I had screech owls in my barn," or screech owl, and it's like those are the species that I miss not living in the state. Plus, like, and then I'll tell people like about the atlas and to try to get them to submit it because like I'm not out at night ever, and even in the early morning, I feel like I just don't. Other than barred owls, which are like everywhere, I don't hear other owls. So, like,
yeah, barred owls are hard for me around here, like in the Ridge and Valley. They're less common right around me. So
if that's funny, because here they're super common, but it was my first time confirming them yesterday when I heard and saw the baby. I heard it and I kept hearing it get closer. I'm like, oh my goodness, and then it like flew right over me. yeah, I just